For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
A warm up from Evo. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. I was thinking that this was going to be pretty much a little bit of a shorter podcast, doing nothing but talking about the national title game, but rudely on Sunday night, the Arkansas Razorbacks decided to hire on John Calipari as their coach. I had already done the interview with Chris Cichon, who does great work over at USA Today and WTOP Sports before that happened, so I will talk about it here in segment number 1. In the second segment, we're going to be talking with Chris. We had this conversation just after the Final Four games wrapped up, so numbers did move a little bit after the conversation. We were looking at a total more around 147, 148 at the time, down to about 145 and a half, 146 now, but we're going to be breaking down the national title game from so many angles, and then in the final segment, it's going to be very easy. I'm going to give you guys my picks and analysis for this national title game as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we have for those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @Juden_D1. Keep in mind, there's the name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And my goodness gracious, we have to take a look at what we all saw from Sunday with John Calipari deciding that he is going to be going to Arkansas. Now, I would say maybe temper expectations just a little bit to begin the season, just because with Coach Cal, he is going to be probably overhauling this Arkansas roster. And you do have to figure that there is going to be a lot of moving pieces aboard this ship. And I mean, we saw that when you saw Rick Pitino go over to St. John's last season. And I do think that for John Calipari, he's certainly going to be trying to get in as many young guys as possible. But I do think that year number 1 for him at Arkansas, and he's done it before in the transfer portal. A lot of people wanted to knock John Calipari for the fact that he didn't have a lot of transfers this year at Kentucky. In past years, he had a few more. I feel like he could have used more this season. It's a fair criticism, but what I think it's going to come down to for John Calipari, how does he actually coach himself? Because, I mean, there's no question he's able to get talent. Like, if you look at the raw talent that John Calipari had year in and year out of Kentucky, I don't know if he ever had a roster that, in terms of, once again, the talent itself and absolutely nothing else, the talent, he ever had a roster that was outside the top 5. Now, the execution of that talent and what he was able to get out of that talent, not so great to say the least. And that's something that I feel like maybe he got a little bit complacent at Kentucky. I don't think that a lot of people want to say it, but perhaps he did. Perhaps he was going through the motions a little bit. Now that he's at Arkansas, perhaps he's going to put a pep in his step. And we've seen John Calipari be a really good X's and O coach, really get the most out of his teams. Now, a lot of that goes back to his days at like Memphis. A lot of that goes back to his days at UMass, and perhaps because he was getting all these 5-star guys, perhaps because he was getting all the talent itself, maybe he got a little bit, for lack of a better term, Wes Reynolds at VSiN uses this quite a bit, fat and happy, but certainly this is a big-time hire for Arkansas. Now, once again, this is not a team that I want to be firing in on the futures market with or anything like that, as a lot of books they currently do have odds to be able to win the 2025 national championship, and as we know with Arkansas, they were one of the chic picks a season ago, and we saw how that turned out. And you want to take a look at how this roster is going to be looking as I record this right now. Arkansas is 30-1 over at DraftKings. Honestly, I would not be surprised if that is a number that actually goes very much northward, but once again, with Arkansas, how they're going to look at the beginning part of the season, that's a big giant question mark, because this number, it's probably not going to be at 30-1 to begin the season. As a matter of fact, if you think that Arkansas is going to go out there guns blazing, they're going to get a whole bunch of guys in, and they're going to absolutely dominate from the start of the season to the end of the season, you want to grab this number right now. I do not think that that is going to be the case. I think that Arkansas is probably going to drop a few games, at which point you probably would be able to get a little bit of a better number. And as we know with betting, odds to be able to win the NCAA tournament winner, there's only one winner. Now, I know that some of you guys do a very good job of hedging these options, just trying to be able to find some buy low options, but more of you guys that do that are looking at more of these teams down the board. Like, for example, if you think Oklahoma's going to have a good year at 120 to 1, that's something that you look at a little bit more than more of these short shots. Any team has like below 30 to 1, like right now, we've got Arkansas at 30 to 1. Again, I think that this is a number that is going to move. I think that books have just been a little bit asleep at the wheel because this is a move that was made at like midnight, and I think that there's going to be a lot of people that hammer Arkansas. Like I said, if you think that they're going to completely dominate, if you think that they're going to get just a whole bunch of talent in general, probably take this number right now, but I do think that it does cause quite a bit of shift out there in college basketball, and it begs the question, where's Kentucky going to go next? Because a lot of people are rumoring Nate Oates, but if you take a look at his buyout, that's right around about $18 or so million, and I mean, that would be a great rise up, and I would love to see it for Nate Oates. He's someone that was a coach over at UW-Whitewater. I remember when he had first taken that Buffalo job. I was out there at my campus radio station in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I got a nice interview with him. He's a nice guy. I believe he actually follows me on the old Twitter/X. So this show is very much pro Nate Oates. For as much as I talked about how rough the Alabama defense is, I am pro Nate Oates. He's a good guy that has worked very hard in this industry and has really been able to build up a heck of a ability to bring in talent and a way to be able to get the most out of his teams. Like, even with that defense I've called lackluster all season long, he was able to make it to the Final Four. So, I mean, I think that speaks to how good of a coach he is, but right now the rumors are Billy Donovan for the NBA, which, I mean, if that's the case, that doesn't cause too much of a ripple effect, but like so Scott Drew, Bruce Pearl, I know that these were guys thrown out by the field of 68. Those would be big-time movers and shakers, no doubt about it. We're going to need to get on Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 because this is a very, very interesting scenario, and it's hard to speculate. I am personally not someone that's going to be like posting up a whole bunch of updates being like, oh, Kentucky was rumored to be having lunch with insert coach here, because this is a sports betting show, and I mean, it's a show where if you're taking a look at the NCAA title for 2025, we've got a lot of work to do. There's going to be north of 2,000 guys that enter in the transfer portal. There's a lot that needs to be decided. There's going to be just so many moving parts in general, and this restarts what was already a very active coaching carousel, but no doubt about it, this is very, very seismic, and like I said, I do think that for John Calipari, I think his X's and O's might actually be a little bit better this year, just because it did feel like he got a little bit complacent over there at Kentucky. I do think that he's going to get back to his roots and not just recruit a whole bunch of five-star guys and say, oh, they're going to whip it together, and certainly with Arkansas, it sounds like nice and chicken. They're going to be throwing out there quite a bit of NIL money, and fortunately for myself, I didn't have to throw out there any NIL money to be able to get our next guest aboard. He was just willing to come on and was having a great chat with me. As coming up next, it is one of our good friends in Chris Cichon. He does great work over at WTOP Sports, does a nice job over at USA Today. We're going to preview the national title game with him next, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Peterson, now a part of the Beast Daily Podcast. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast. It is great to be joined by this man, as Chris Cichon. He does great work over at WTOP Sports. Couple with that, he's doing amazing work over at USA Today, taking a look at so many different things. I know that he is getting set for the NHL playoffs, but couple that with the fact that he's done incredible work with regards to the college basketball season, getting ramped up for baseball as well. So he covers it all oh so well, and you're able to follow him on Twitter/X at The Big Cheese Show. That is CHEE on Chi before show, and it's always great to have you aboard, Chris. Thank you so much.
Greg, thank you for having me, and thank you for your great call on the under with the Purdue game. I followed you there. I'm typically a little bit hesitant to go unders with Purdue, just given how well they shoot the three-pointer this year compared to last year, especially, what was it like? Had a stat on the screen, 288th last year, now second in all of college basketball this year. So, yeah, the Purdue under, though, does come through, and it was a nice Saturday evening, and very much excited to be previewing the national championship game with you here, bro.
Absolutely. And Chris, let's dive in on this national title game. As right now, we are doing this as we're seeing some openers come out. By the time this podcast is up, it might be sharpened up a little bit, but most places have Purdue as between about a 5.5 to a 6-point underdog. I've seen some initial openers of about a 148 to a 149 in terms of total, and I have a feeling that's coming down because if I'm looking anything on that initial opener, I really do like the under. But how do you take a look at this UConn versus Purdue game? Because Purdue, if they're able to hang within 13 points, they will be the first team in 2 years in the NCAA tournament to hang within 13 points of UConn.
I believe I'm going to be taking the points with Purdue because I don't see Braden Smith having as kind of mediocre of a game as he did in the Final Four matchup against NC State. I mean, in the first 5 minutes, he had 2 backcourt violations, and we saw his first three-pointer come with 3 minutes and change to go. That made it an 18-point game. I mean, other contributors to Purdue certainly were big-time factors, and Edey surpassing David Robinson, 20 points, 10 rebounds. So that was, in terms of the streak there. Now he has 6 games in a row doing that. And yeah, Lance Jones can bury the 3. Fletcher Lawyer had himself a nice little game there. He had contributed to a 9-1 run. That made it a 15-point Purdue lead. So, they can get out and score as well, too. And they possess that big man down low, which Alabama really did not have in their matchup against UConn. They had some moments there for sure. They were able to take it to Clingan a little bit, but yeah, now they have a true test with Edey down low, and Trey Kaufman, Ren can play kind of tough, and so yeah, I think I'm going to be taking the points there with Purdue initially, but it's tough to do. What is it, 11 games in a row, 13 plus points? It's tough to do, but I think I'm going to take the points.
Yep, I'm right there with you as well because I do take a look at this run that UConn has had in the NCAA tournament the last 2 seasons, and I did lay out the set as we've got Chris Cichon, who does great work over at USA Today and WTOP Sports, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and it's undeniable. This UConn team has been dominant the last 2 seasons, but keep in mind that when UConn made the Final Four last year, they were actually the top seed in the Final Four as a 4 seed. And I just look at this run that UConn has had the last 2 years in the NCAA tournament, and I just feel like they haven't seen a team quite like Purdue.
They're not going to get 8 blocks, I'm thinking, this time around against this Purdue team. And when Pringle for Alabama was going at Clingan, he got fouled, got shaken up, so you can do it there. And we saw Grant Nelson doing so as well, too, being able to get a couple of offensive boards. And we know Alabama did so in the first half, being able to just, grab scrappy rebounds and be able to kick it out and not necessarily have a hot three-point shooting second half. The first half they were rolling. But, yeah, UConn's impressive, no doubt about it. Cam Spencer, to me, somebody that is a strong player for this team, no doubt about it, but he wasn't playing all that great, I thought, in the first half. So if you can limit him being able to shoot from the free throw line as well as being able to facilitate, that's what he appears to do best with this team. Tristan Newton as well, too, being able to set up some of those alley-oops. You got to limit that stuff there. I think Purdue defensively will be able to do that, really stick on these guys here. Basketball can be simple sometimes. Hit that jump hook, work the pick and roll off some of these guards here, and they should be able to hang in there. But if Edey's hitting his shots and playing consistently like he has been, I think he should be able to hang with Clingan, But UConn's deep. They got Johnson who can come off and get some jams here. I've mentioned Newton can come off the bench and score 3-pointers, so it's scary. I reiterate, I like how Purdue does match up, but Caravan could shoot threes. UConn's just so deep.
And I do want to get your thoughts on this as well, having just watched the Final Four games. How surprised were you at the good 3-point shooting that we saw from really both of these teams? Because UConn went 10 of 25 from 3, and their counterpart, Alabama, they were as hot as lava to start the game from 3-point range. Purdue, they were able to shoot 40% from 3-point range as well, because typically when we see these games played in a football stadium like we've got here, typically the 3-point shooting percentages go down, but both of these teams come into this game having shot really well from 3-point range in the previous matchup.
Yeah, that was a great point out by you, Greg, when we talked about that earlier in the week, just the different depth perception than shooting, and it did lend to these unders coming through. And the makeup of the Alabama team, so many of these transfers, and look, it got them to the point where they were competing with the defending national champion. But Strada turning it over late, down 6, 8:39 to play. I wrote that one down because I thought that was just such a crucial possession there for them if they wanted to hang in there and potentially make that a game. And Pringle, I talked about him. He's a Wofford transfer. Grant Nelson coming from like North Dakota State or something like that. So, yeah, they got guys coming from all over the place on that team. Unlike UConn, who I guess UConn did retool from last season's national championship team. But, a guy like Clingan was able to learn from an Adama Sanogo. And so, yeah, it was really just impressive to see UConn really be able to win this style of play this year. Tristan Newton, we hear the stories about him being heavily recruited when he was coming out of ECU, and UConn had 5 double-digit scorers, but there was nobody that was on the floor at any given time where it was oh goodness. It's not like Jordan Hawkins, when he was shooting the 3-pointers, it was oh man, he's their 3-point guy. It's anybody on this UConn team that can really contribute and score. So that's where they really can scare you there too. And yeah, Camp Spencer, this is a guy coming from Loyola, Davidsonville, Maryland, then Rutgers, now UConn. Great career trajectory in college. And yeah, again, if you can limit him and his ability to facilitate, I think stick guys like Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith on them. And Mason Gillis, good player there as well too for Purdue. That's how they hang in there.
Yep, I think that is going to be so big for them, being able to do a solid job on the glass. You're going to have 2 giants of the earth, Donovan Clingan, coupled with Zach Edey going at it. I think that this is going to be a tremendous matchup, and I do want to talk to you about this a little bit as well in terms of the total, because I did mention it just in passing when I was revealing that this line is right around about 6 in a lot of places. But when I take a look at this line as of right now, we're recording this, total's right around about 147.5 or so. What really does stand out to me is the under, because we've been alluding to these two teams, how great they play on defense. I just don't understand why we've got such a high total in this one. And I do think that those shooting numbers that were so good for both of these teams come down a little bit. And if I'm looking at anything right now, I'm going to be looking at the under.
Yeah, Greg, I'm certainly going to be leaning that way as well, too. And I think about a guy like Castle, the freshman player of the year. I remember him more playing in this matchup against Alabama, going to the rim and cutting and getting the flush at the rim, getting fouled, as opposed to, trying to chuck up the 3, right? And I think that's going to be, even with Edey down low there too, still trying to get to the basket, get fouled, play. I've mentioned this before in conversation with you too, Alex Caravan being able to back down, but it's not going to be a 3-point shooting contest to me here. I don't think. I mean, again, I remember at one point watching the game, the Alabama-UConn game, and Reitzel's hitting threes left and right, and they went 7 of 10 from deep at one point, and that game still didn't go over. I know the number's down from the 160.5 that we saw in the Final Four matchup here, but yeah, I just expect to see a lot more working it to the basket, a lot of, I mentioned Castle, somebody who is going to be a big-time contributor down low here. Johnson, too, a big-time player for this UConn team. And it was pointed out in the broadcast, too, by Rafter or Grant Hill. They were not necessarily the best 3-point shooting team in this tournament, but still blowing teams out, so they can beat you a number of different ways. I would lean towards the under here as well, too, especially since Purdue's game plan is they want to get it down to Edey for 2s, right? I mean, they can shoot 3s, but I am fascinated to see that Clingan versus Edey matchup. Who is going to get the best of that one there? I know Edey's a little bit taller, but Clingan, I mean, he's long. I think the comparison I heard on the broadcast was Bill Russell, and I think that was solid how long he is. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch for sure. But I'm in agreement with you on the total, I'm thinking.
Yep, and it is going to be a tremendous national title game. And, Chris, I know you're doing great work over at USA Today, WTOP Sports, and so much more. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, you can follow me along at The Big Cheese Show on Twitter, Instagram, continuing work with hockey and promoting contests over at WTOP.com, where we have picks of the day every single day. So, yeah, you can hear me at 103.5 in D.C. and check out my work, USA Today. Greg, thankful, as always, for for having me on this esteemed show. Listened throughout the course of the season, and no one does it better than you when it comes to talking college basketball. So what a privilege. Thank you so much, bro.
Always appreciate Chris. He does such a great job on so many different fronts. He joins me a lot on my baseball podcast. He's doing a great job with regards to hockey, and every single time he joins me, always lends great insight. So big thanks, Chris, for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And coming up next, it is a granddaddy. It's a national title game. It's going down on Monday. I'll give you guys my picks and analysis for the final college basketball game of the year as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here at Mobile Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. It was great to be able to get Chris aboard. He does such a good job taking a look at so many things over there at WTOP Sports. Every single time he joins me, I feel like I get just a little bit smarter, always lends great insights, whether that be on the baseball front, the college basketball front, you name it, he does it. So big thanks, Chris, for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis for the national title game as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNN_D1. Very easy to go in rotation order when there's only one game on the rotation. I broke this down a little bit yesterday, and really not a lot has changed. I tried to find you guys some props, and I've got to lean on one personally. I've not bet any props myself. I might fire in on the lean that I'm going to give you guys, but I am a firm believer in just sticking with what you've done all season long. I've never really been a prop guy myself, so I will just throw that out there right now. But let's take a look at 675, 676 on the card. It is UConn and Purdue, and before I go any further, not the time to go all in with your bankroll. This is the last game of the season. This does not need to be the last day of the year for your bankroll. There's NBA basketball to bet on. There's going to be WNBA basketball to bet on. Baseball, football is back in our lives if you're a fan of the UFL, so don't make some sort of a stupid bet that you wouldn't make in a normal circumstance. If you don't see much of an edge, you don't need to fire in 37 units just because you've got 37 units in your bankroll. So do want to make that known right here, but 675, 676 on the card. UConn is going to be playing against Purdue. Purdue is a 6.5 to a 7-point underdog, 50-50 divide between the 6.5s and the 7.5s. Total on this game is 145.5, and despite the fact that this has dropped quite a bit from when I was initially looking at these numbers right when the Final Four wrapped up Saturday night, as you were able to get as good as a 148 on the under at DraftKings. Now you're down to about 145.5, 146. So made the right up the under. You've got a UConn team that in games played away from home, 330th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for Purdue, overall, they're about 189th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but that said, if you look at what they've done since the beginning of the month of February, they are playing at a clip of about 4.4 possessions per game fewer than they did in their first 24 games of the season. Meanwhile, you've got a Huskies team that is 11th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And though I do think that UConn is going to be able to get the job done, they're going to be able to win this game, I do think that this number has gotten a little bit too lofty as well. I was willing to make this number 5, so I'm going to be taking the 6.5 to 7 here with Purdue, and I do think that Purdue is the best team that UConn has played in their run in the last two NCAA tournaments. Like for UConn, when they made the Final Four last year, they were the top seed in the Final Four despite being a 4 seed, because you just saw a mass exodus chaos in that NCAA tournament, and I do think that Purdue, one of the few teams that is going to be able to match up with Giant of the Earth, Donovan Clingan, who has been just one of the best defensive players in all of college basketball this season. When it comes to that big man battle, I do think that you've got Clingan, who might be a little bit better on the defensive side of things, Edey, who's a little bit better on the offensive side of things, so I do think that that's going to be quite a clash. You've got Clingan, who's able to give you 2.5 blocks per contest, and that does bear out in the numbers as well. This UConn team, number 2 in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. It's a UConn team that does a solid job on the glass, and really both of these teams do. In terms of percentage of missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound, Purdue is in the top 25 nationally in terms of missed shots in a road/neutral court environment that opponents haul in as an offensive rebound. UConn is 33rd with this regard, with opponents getting only 23% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. And not only is it Donovan Clingan that does it, you've got a forgotten guy in Alex Karaban that's giving you 13.5 points, 5 boards. And the one lean that I do have on a prop, Alex Karaban right now I'm seeing is over on rebounds at a 4.5 at a minus 105 at DraftKings. Not a bad option in my opinion. If you're looking for a little bit of a player prop, that's something that I would certainly be willing to get behind, as Karaban, he really is a forgotten guy for this team, because we talk about Tristan Newton, we talk about Cam Spencer. These two guys combined for a little bit over 29 points per contest. Newton can give you a triple-double on any given night, 6 assists, 6.5 rebounds per contest. Spencer is that good three-point shooter at 44.3%, but Karaban is a guy that has size, shoots 38.5% from 3, north of 88% at the free throw line. I mean, he's been rock solid for the team. And then you had Stephon Castle actually be one of the top scorers here in the NCAA tournament for UConn, and he's more of a number 4, number 5 option for the team. Meanwhile, for Purdue, what I think is going to be so key for them hanging in this game, you just need better execution from Braden Smith than you got in that Final Four game against NC State. At as many points as myself and 4 turnovers in the first half, was still able to give you some nice facilitation, was still able to pull in there some rebounds. And overall for the season, he's only been averaging about 2.7 turnovers per game, but you need him to be able to clean it up. Now, both of these teams, they really don't generate a lot of turnovers. Both of these teams generating fewer than 12 turnovers per game, so I do think that he is going to be able to work to clean that up a little bit. And this is a Purdue unit that is number 2 in the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, but you look at both of these teams in terms of their three-point shooting defense, they're both in the top 55 nationally. I do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job there. And for Purdue, this is a bunch that they don't have quite the same defense as UConn does. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are clocking in 50th in all of college basketball, but I do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job in this ordeal, and I do think that human nature takes hold with regards to this under as well. When you get into an adverse environment like this, first thing to go on you is the jump shooting, and we saw some really good three-point shooting in the Final Four game from both of these teams. Both of these teams shot 40%, I believe 10 of 25 approximately for both of these teams. I do think that that's going to be downward a little bit, just because I do think that the nerves of playing in the biggest game of your life, even for a UConn team that did win the title last season, I do think that that's going to take hold a little bit. And while Purdue is number 2 in the country with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, and out of their top 8 scores, all but 2 of them shooting north of 40% from 3, and I believe all but 1 shooting at least 35% from 3-point range. They do shoot more like 36.9% from 3-point range in a roadside court venue compared to 45% when they are at home. You've certainly been able to get Fletcher Lawyer going, giving you about 10.5 points per contest. A little bit of a guy that doesn't pop out with regards to the box score, but you tell that he makes winning plays. And then just the depth of this team. Guys like a Trey Kaufman, Wren, Mason Gillis, Cameron Heide was able to pull in there some rebounds in that game against NC State. That's been big. And guys like Hassan Diarra on the flip side for UConn are guys I think are going to be able to make a little bit of a difference as well. I do think that Purdue and UConn going to be playing a little bit of a slower slog of a game. Like I said, if you're looking for a player prop, I would say Alex Karaban has himself a relatively nice game. Lance Jones is a guy that I think could be okay as well, but he seems a little bit hit or miss. Has been averaging about 12 points per contest, but shooting about 36% from 3-point. It feels like he doesn't make a lot of plays, but he just makes big plays in general. And I do think that while UConn is able to win their second straight title, I don't think that this is going to be the same level of domination where they won every single one of their last 11 NCAA tournament games by 13 plus points. I do think that this is their toughest test into NCAA tournaments. Set my line at 5, so I'm going to be taking the points with Purdue, and my write-up that is on this total under, and that will wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @June_1. Keep in mind, letters you have, they mean does not matter. So, as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks to Chris Cichon of USA Today and WTOP Sports for joining me in the last segment. This podcast is going to be on all 366 days this year. I'll be with you every single day throughout the off season. We'll recap what we saw in the title game and start looking forward to 2024-25 on the podcast tomorrow. So appreciate you tuning in all throughout the regular season, and don't be a stranger because I'll be with you guys every single day with a fresh podcast, which means I'm back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.